Hello there, my name is Myra and I've been doing natural dyes for close to 20 years, and that includes mushroom dyes. So today we are revisiting mushroom dyes by doing a dye with the orange gilled Cortinarius, or you may know it as the Cinnamon Webcap. So I will run through some simple ID tips, the super simple dye process, and have a lot of fun doing it. All right, let's get going. So before we get started, it's important to point out that Cortinarius mushrooms are poisonous if you eat them, so don't do that. But it is okay to touch them. I personally wash my hands after handling them because that's what makes me feel more comfortable. Ideally, we would be doing this dye outside because it can be a little smelly, but because of the weather, we're forced to shoot inside today. And then all the supplies that we're using today, these are dye supplies only. You never mix your kitchen supplies in with your dye supplies, especially when you're dealing with something that is considered poisonous. Now, the yarn's not going to be poisonous, but I'm also not going to drink the dye. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't ingest it. You'll be fine. So let's talk about those supplies. First of all, we have our dye pot and we have a hot plate or a stove. I have my stirring spoon and vinegar because we are going to make this dye bath acidic. If you don't have vinegar, you can also use acetic acid. I have my pH strips because I'll want to test my dye bath. And I have my fiber. Today, it's a small skein of wool that I pre-mortared with alum. And I have my mushrooms. These I collected yesterday. And so I think that's about it. Let's start dyeing. There are a lot of little brown mushrooms out there, and I have often misidentified Cortinarius. It is one of the largest genus of fungi. So I have a separate video that gives great ID tips for the Cortinarius mushroom that I did with my mom, who has been dyeing with mushrooms for 50 years. And I will have a link to that down below. So to start off, we need to prepare our mushrooms, which simply means removing the cap from the stem. The stem has yellow pigment in it, and I want to focus just on the orange pigment. So after you remove your stem, save it and you can do a separate dye with these later. And then after you have your cap, you're just literally going to break it up into small pieces. So I have a jar here and different mushrooms here, which are a little bit older. You don't need to use the jar when you're doing this dye. I simply want to break up my mushroom pieces and add it to the jar so you can see how super cool it is when the dye goes from the mushroom and into the water. So you're going to break up your pieces into small pieces because you want to help the pigment get out, and add it into your jar. Before you break it up, you want to weigh them. So when it comes to a ratio, if you find enough mushrooms, use a 2-to-1 ratio, which means you're using twice as many mushrooms to fiber. So if you have 20 grams of mushrooms, you can dye 10 grams of fiber. I already weighed these previously, so I know that I have twice as many mushrooms to my little small skein of fiber. And before I forget, this is now soaking in warm water because I want that fiber to be fully saturated in water before I add it to my dye bath. It helps the dye absorb more evenly. So you just keep breaking these little guys up into tiny little pieces, just like this. I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but I'm actually getting the pigment onto my fingers and it's orange, and that's always a very good sign. Okay, I have my mushrooms broken up, and now I'm going to add boiling water. Now again, I'm just doing it this way because I want to show you how cool it looks. When you do the dye, simply heat water up in your pot and then add the mushrooms. That's perfectly fine. But first, let me grab my boiling water. And I'm just going to fill it up and watch the magic happen. Look how immediate that is. It is so cool. And this is a really great way to know that you for sure have picked the right type of Cortinarius for this dye. Okay, let me put this back on the stove. Okay, now we can get back to the actual dyeing. I'm going to pour this into my little dye pot. Wow, this is actually kind of hot. It's already very hot, so it's not going to take me very long to get this up to a simmer. And I want it to simmer for about a half an hour to an hour. It's best to not let it boil. If it accidentally boils for a little bit, that's okay. It's not that sensitive of a dye, but you don't want it to boil for like an hour. So I'm going to get this to a simmer. Let me get this actually turned on and let it do its thing. And then we will come back, make the dye acidic, and add our fiber. So this has been going for close to an hour, and I am ready to change the bath to acidic. So before we do that, I'm going to use my little handy dandy measuring cup because I just want to look at the color as it is now and see if it changes after we make it acidic. So for right now, I don't know what I would call that. Kind of a dark orange. Let's check the pH just to see what it's at to start with. Oh, it almost looks like it's a 7, 6, 7. So that's about neutral. I want it to be acidic, so I'm going to try to bring it down closer to a 4 or a 5. And I'm going to do that by adding my glug of vinegar. Very scientific. Glug measurement. Glug. Stir. Check pH. Maybe about a 5. So I think I'm going to do a second glug. Glug. Stir. That looks better. I think it's closer to a 4. I think that's good. I could go lower, but I'm just going to stick with that. The nice thing about an acidic dye bath versus an alkaline dye bath is an acidic bath isn't going to harm the yarn, where an alkaline dye bath, if it's too alkaline, it can actually start to roughen it or make it felt a little bit, but acidic is just fine. Oh, that's right. Let me check the color. I mean, that looks brighter to me. Looks like a clear, brighter orange color. Let me get a bigger scoop and see if we can see it better. You know what? I'm going to add more I just want to see what's going to happen. Glug number 3, or 3.5 at this point. Gosh, honestly, I can't really tell if it has changed that much. I mean, it's definitely not a 3. I'm going to say it's closer to a 4, and that's just going to be good enough. I have to stop playing around. Okay, let's just see if it brightened it up anymore. I don't know if I can really tell a difference. That's fine. Let's just add our yarn because that is really what is going to tell the story. So I have my very well saturated yarn that's been in warm water because I don't want to shock the yarn. And it's better to have it already soaking in that warm water before we get it into a hot dye bath. Oh yeah. You can see it's already just going this beautiful apricot orange. Oh, that is fantastic. So I'm gonna let this hang out in the dye bath for about an half an hour to an hour. I'm gonna turn it down because I don't want it to boil with the wool in there. And I should mention at this point, I mean, I always say pull it when you like the color. And sometimes when you're doing this dye, an hour later, you're like, this is fantastic, I'm gonna pull the color. And another time you do it and you wait an hour and you're like, this isn't as bright as I thought it would be. And that could be because of the age of the mushroom or who knows what. Just turn it off and leave it in the dye pot overnight. You can check it the next day. You can leave it in there for a couple of days. I've done this before where I've left it in there for a few days, checked it, and the dye water is almost clear because the yarn has absorbed all of the dye. So it just varies. You have to be flexible with this. So I'm going to leave it here for an hour and then we're going to check it and I'll decide if I want to keep it in there longer or if it's time to pull it out. Such good color. So this has been sitting in the dye bath for close to half an hour or so, and you can see how the orange has really begun to develop, and it's a really beautiful, hot orange color. I think I am going to turn off the heat and just leave this in the dye bath and leave it there overnight. I want to see if I can get it a little bit darker. Because like I was saying, you're going to get different shades of orange depending on how old the mushroom was when you picked it. It could be where you picked it. I have a variety of different oranges that you can see here that were all from the Orange Guild Cortinarius. Actually, to give you an idea of the shades that you can get, this is the first skein that I dyed this year with very young Cortinarius, and it's definitely not the same orange as this one. Still a beautiful color, but it's a different shade. They were young, these were older. This skein right here, this is from mushrooms that were collected from 15 years ago. So I have no idea what condition those were in. And sometimes those little yellow quartz mix in with the orange quartz and, you know, you get some in there and you're not going to get as bright of an orange. So the point is to stay flexible in your process and your expectations. So good luck mushroom hunting and dyeing. Come join me on my Patreon and you can watch an extended version of this video, which includes additional ID information, including how to make a spore print, which is just super cool and awesome. Plus, I share a lot over there, including little exclusive dye videos, and we have a community forums where we can share our projects and ask questions. So I hope to see you there.